Welcome to the Two Ton Nerds. As always, my name is Max James. It is October 31st, 2014. It's Halloween, and I am ODing on horror movies, basically. I will be just plastered in front of my television watching horror movies for the rest of the night. And I'll be ending Halloween or October with my favorite movie to watch on Halloween, Trick or Treat. But I've already talked about that movie, so I'm going to be talking about the movies that I've watched this past week. I know I've been very busy, so I thought I'd just make one big video for Halloween. And so this will cover days 25 through 31. These are in no particular order. They're just movies that I've watched throughout these days that I put on the list, or that I've included on this list. Now, first one up is Otis for the 31 Days of Fright Horror Movie Project Year 3. Now, the first movie is Otis. This movie is more horror than comedy. I mean, more comedy than horror. Sorry about that. It's very funny. It has some really good moments in there. It is very creepy like. Because it follows Otis, who kidnaps these girls and tries to lives out a fantasy like he's the football star and they're the cheerleader, and he asks her out and they're going to prom and they're cruising in his Trans Am, and there's some really good music in this movie. Blue Oyster Cult, Quiet Riot. I mean, there's some good bands in this movie, but it's very good. It's very well acted. It's very well shot. It's just a fun movie to watch, and that's why I included it, because it is fun. It is a fun movie because I do have to spoil this movie a little bit, because the main girl, played by Ashley Johnson, who you will recognize her voice if you ever played the game Last of Us, as she plays Ellie, the little girl, and it's a really good movie because when she escapes, and then the movie kind of shifts a little bit to the parents. The movie was kind of on the girl, but she escapes, and so the movie kind of shifts to the parents, and like, oh, we're going to go get some revenge for hurting our little girl, and they end up screwing that up too. So I don't want to spoil it. I mean, it is very funny, but there's some creepy moments in this movie just because of how he's wanting to live out this fantasy, and his brother, he's trying to do the best he can to keep Otis from just on the straight and narrow, and obviously it's not working, and he obviously doesn't know what's going on in the barn behind his house, or in the shed, or whatever it is. So this movie has some good acting. It has Daniel Stern, Kevin Pollak, Ashley Johnson, like I mentioned. You'll recognize about everyone in this movie from TV or movie. I think the only one I don't recognize is the brother of the family. That's the only one I don't recognize, but I'll look into it eventually. So, which brings me into my next movie is Hostel, directed by Eli Roth. Now, I do have to talk about the gore factor in this movie a little bit, because that's the whole reason for horror movies, is the gore and blood and guts and all that good stuff. So, but the Hostel follows these three guys going, just traveling abroad, having a good time, and they kind of get this tip about this hostel, and they go there, and they end up meeting a couple girls there, and they they're not what they seem. So one day, one by one they start to go missing, and then that's where this movie really kind of takes place. Really kicks off is when they are in this torture dungeon, because they are being bought. These guys are being bought for people to come in there and kill them, and they're very expensive. It's very expensive, which I'll get into in a second in the sequel. But the gore you get, I will admit, when this movie first came out, I was very hyped, because I was not able to see it in theaters, and people were like, oh my god, this movie is bloody, it has a lot of nudity, and it's just like, oh dear god, it's the worst movie. I mean, it's just a super gory horror movie, and I'm like, okay, that sounds like something I would watch, horror movie wise. And so I watched it, it was more hype than whatever, but I still liked it though. You got I have to kind of talk about the gore. It's eyeballs getting cut off from the little optic nerve thing, and then you get the worst scene in this movie that makes me cringe every single time. I put it up there with the scene from Pet Sematary. It's the Achilles tendon scene where he cuts it, and I put it up there with the kid cutting the grandpa's Achilles tendon. Oh my god, it makes me cringe. It really does, more than the cutting of the eyeball. And so it's a really good gory movie. I mean, it's a fun horror movie to watch in the month of October. It really is, and just really good acting. I think the acting is pretty decent for a horror movie. Which brings me to the sequel, Hostel Part 2. Now this one I think is the more well-rounded of the two. I like Hostel Part 2 a lot better because it is more well-rounded, and it also dives in more into the elite hunting group, which hunts these people for people to kill. And so when these two American girls, they are like instantly put on the auction block, but they don't know it. So as soon as one's bought, they take them away, and that's where this movie really dives in, because it follows two groups. You got the follows the people who are going to be doing the killing and the victims, and it's really cool because it dives, like I said, dives more into the world of this, and it's just pretty cool. I mean, it still keeps all the gore and sex and violence and all that crap for a horror movie, but it's more well-rounded. I think this. I've not seen the third one yet. It's on my list just to watch for fun, but not on this project list. But I think that one takes place in Las Vegas. But these take place in like in a country. I can't remember what it is. But it is. These movies I really highly recommend. They're just fun movies to watch if you are not squeamish. If you're squeamish, I'd pass. But if you like seeing a good gory horror movie, and these movies are in the subgenre of torture porn horror, which I can see why if you've ever seen it. Okay, now the next movie up is a nice balance of comedy and horror. Unlike Otis, this is a very good balance. It is The Tripper, directed by David Arquette. This movie has everyone in it too. It has Thomas Jane as you may recognize him from The Punisher, Paul Rubin, Pee Wee Herman. Then you got Jamie King, you may recognize her from Fanboys and Sin City. She plays Goldie. And who else? You got Jason Mewes as Jay from the Jay and Silent Bob and Clerks movies and whatever. And then who else is in this movie? You'll just recognize everyone because these are good. There's all good acting in this movie. David Arquette makes an appearance, and as well as his wife at the time. She plays a really funny role in it. But it follows all these people going to like this Woodstock kind of what's it called? This Woodstock kind of concert out in the middle of the woods, and the people who are there are not liking it. So one of them takes it upon himself to wear a Ronald Reagan mask and start hacking people to death with an axe. And it's very funny because the person who's wearing the Ronald Reagan mask does the Ronald Reagan voice, and it's just really good. There's some really good comedy moments, as well as there's some really good gory horror in this. So overall, I think it's fun. I really recommend this movie. I watched this movie with like Shaun of the Dead and stuff like that because it's just good balance of horror. So I highly recommend that one. And I know this next movie isn't exactly horror, but I like this movie to watch during the month of October because it is very horror-esque. The same reason why Red State was on the list a couple years ago, and a few others. It is Black Swan. The reason why I put this on the list is because there is some kind of like shocking moments in this movie, especially as Natalie Portman's character, who is up for this main role as the black and white swan in Swan Lake. She kind of starts to, her mind is, I don't think her mind is all the way there to begin with, and her mom isn't helping, which she's creepy enough for this movie. But as the movie progresses, she kind of starts taking on, everything is just too much for her, and she's just very uptight. I hate using that word because she's just very like shy. That's the best way. And she's just like, I don't know if she then the instructor's like, you just gotta let loose, and because the Black Swan role requires an attitude that she does not have, and it's just really good. As the movie progresses, she starts to turn into she takes on characters of the Black Swan, or a swan in general, because there's some scenes where her leg bends and she's pulling feathers out of her back. I mean, it's just like, oh man. And especially the final sequence in this movie where the play is actually being put on, and there's just some really good special effects and moments in this movie. I know it's not very gory and it's not very scary, but it's just a very good movie, and I love watching it during the month of October. I really do. Now, for the final 2 days of Halloween Eve and Halloween, I watched Jeepers Creepers and Jeepers Creepers 2. I have not watched these movies in a very long time, and a friend of mine mentioned that they had them, so I'm like, on the list they go. So this is the movie that I'll be kind of diving in more into all of them. And so the first movie I will talk about is Jeepers Creepers, obviously, the first out of the two movies. So it follows this brother and sister going home from spring break from college, and because the sister kind of broke up with her boyfriend, and the brother is just kind of calling around. It's like, why aren't you going? And they'll be asking questions when they get home. Parents, just brother and sister, just banter and argument and stuff like that. So on the way home, they kind of a truck kind of comes up there, a big brown kind of cargo-esque thing with two swing doors on the back, and it's just like they're being terrorized on the road. And he is just being relentless. And then we find out why he was doing that on purpose a little later in the movie. And then they just kind of drive off into a field, and the truck keeps on going. So, but before that, they see that same black, brown, multicolored, rust-colored vehicle dump bodies down a large pipe out in the middle of the woods next to a church. And so the truck sees him, and they're like, oh, they terrorize him some more, and he's like, that's where they drive off into the field. It's like, well, we gotta go back and make sure that whoever they dumped out in the pipe is dead, or we'll just contact the police afterwards and stuff like that. So they go down there. Justin Long, who is in this movie, he goes down there and he just sees like bodies just preserved, mummified, just plastered all over the wall. And throughout the movie, they had this conversation where they talked about this girl who went missing, and they only found her head. And they find that girl holding on to her boyfriend, like death grip, basically. And with the class ring, and her head has been sewed back on. So it's like, oh, that's where it happened to that girl. So they just make it to the gas station, and they find their vehicle ransacked, and he stalking them basically at this point. And they also get a phone call from a psychic saying, like, one of you, it's like, don't go, or don't, it's just warning them, basically. I don't want to give anything away, but throughout this movie, it's really good. There's just some really good, scary moments. And what makes this movie even better is that the creature in question, the Jeepers Creeper, or the Creeper, that's what they call it throughout the movie, or the ending title ends, or the way whatever. So, he is a character of its own. They show this monster a lot in this movie, and if they're going to do that, I think it has to look good, which it does. It has to act well on camera, which it does. It has very good, very well moments. I mean, he is a character of its own, and especially in the second one, which I'll get to in a second or two. It's just the way this movie ends, it's good. I mean, there's a nice twist at the end, and it's just like, it's really good. So in the sequel, it follows a bunch of high schoolers coming home from the state championship, and their bus gets blown out tire, and obviously it's who it's about, but they end up getting trapped further down the road. It's like, oh, we can drive on that one tire because it's a dually wheeled tire or whatever. I don't know, car crap. Anyway, so they keep on going down the road, and another tire bursts. So it's like, oh, they're screwed now. But at the same time, there's a subplot going on with this guy, this dad, and his son are tracking down the creature as well, because earlier, this creature only shows up on the 23rd summer, and only 23rd, every 23 years on 23rd summer and only eats for 23 days. So it's on the final day of that before he goes into hibernation or whatever. So it's feeding time. So his earlier in the movie, his son gets taken, his littlest boy. So he spends his entire life hunting down this creature, or waiting for this creature to show up. And finally it does when it attacks this school bus of high schoolers. And immediately the teachers and the bus driver get picked off very quickly. And it's hilarious because they're just like... and all you see is the flare just fall down. And it's some really cool moments. You don't see them get killed or anything. It's just like, they just disappear, and it's funny. Then that's where the movie kind of picks up from there, because they're trying to survive this creature, because he's just picking on them, scaring them like they did in the first movie, where he was just driving and messing with them on the road. He's provoking fear in them, and so he's trying to smell a certain something in them. I don't know what he's looking for, but he's just like picking them out left and right, and like, oh, he knows who he's going to kill and who he's not going to kill for what he needs. And the students fight back, and they throw a javelin through his head, and they shoot him with flares, and there's some just good moments. And then when the father and his oldest son get there, they just wreak havoc on him too. Havoc on him too, and it's just like, oh, this creature's kind of getting have to work for his food or whatever he is doing, and it's just like, oh, it's really good action and horror, because it's just like he's terrorizing him on the bus, and he's more of a character in the second movie. It's just overall good, fun horror. That's why I saved these two for the last. So what I'm doing to say that the acting in both movies was really good. The first one feels more like a grindhouse film, very old and grainy, which I liked a lot. And the next one, Jeepers Creepers 2, felt like not quite modern horror, but it still felt pretty old, and it just felt good because the special effects looked pretty decent. Everything was really well overall. So overall movie. So I'm going to do my classification scale now on each of the movies. I'll start with the movies I just talked about, Jeepers Creepers 1 and 2. Jeepers Creepers, first one is a horror classic. It's a 5. And Jeepers Creepers 2, it is I say it's a 3. It's more than average horror. It's nothing new to the horror genre, but the character, the creeper in this movie, the monster that the movie is centered around, is a good creature. It's a really good movie, good monster movie. I'm not going to classify this movie since it's not really technically a horror movie, but I like watching it during the month of horror. But I do recommend it just to watch it during the month of October. This one, as much as I like this movie, I do have to say it's just average horror. I mean, it's just your run-of-the-mill horror. I like it. It's just good cast. Good. It's just a good horror movie. The Hostel movies. Now, okay, I say these movies are going. Both of these movies are a 4. They help move the horror genre forward because they created a new genre of film of horror, the torture porn. I know where they brought it more mainstream-esque, and that's why it's a 4, because they did it. They kind of brought this horrible concept of torturing people very badly and very gory to like bigger audience. So that's why it's a 4. And Otis, this is the best watch with the group. It really is. It's just fun. It's all it really is. It's just a fun movie to watch. So I completed it. I'm definitely glad I finished this year's project. Next year I'll have it a little bit more pat down because most of the movies I talked about weren't even on the list. I ended up switching a bunch of movies halfway through. But I enjoyed it. So I'm gonna go watch. Actually, I'm gonna wait until much later to watch my favorite movie, Trick or Treat, like I said. So that's it. My name is Max James, and I'm gonna go geek out.